Yeah.
Yeah, good job with Leslie. That's a win straight out the
Thank
gate.
you. I know we celebrate the small wins over here, and that was an immediate win.
Everyone clap.
Um, I have two super, super amazing guests with me to chat through book club. Before I introduce them, just a little bit of housekeeping. So we're going to do Song of Significance with a Seth Godin's brand new book. At least one person here accidentally read his older and more famous This Is Marketing book. What that same person, Wink, is who recommended our book for next month, Grit by Angela Duckworth. I'm so excited. It was a bit kismet, actually, since this book was first put on my radar. I feel like it is just, I've seen it on so many lists and I've seen it on so many posts sent. So next month, our last session for the year, Grit by Angela Duckworth. And then starting next year with an oldie but a goodie. I've never read it. 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. He does send a mean newsletter, maybe the only newsletter that I actually read. And Marin's going to be our guest for that one. And then the whole list of 2024 books is in Slack. But we have like Adam Grant's brand new book, Thinking in Bets, which I know is a perennial favorite. Think Like a Monk, which I am super excited for. 5-Second Rule by Mel Robbins. So it's just going to be another amazing year of Business Book Club in 2024. And if anybody wants to join, these are the details to join. But let's dig in here. I'm going to stop sharing. Will Shelton, my amazing guest, I'm so excited to have you here. I kind of want to go hard just from the beginning. Introduce yourself so the people know something about you. But then I'm going to just go right in with like a super deep question about the book. Shelton, you want to start off with an introduction?
Yeah, let's go hard. I love going hard. So, hey everybody, I am Shelton Banks. I based out of Chicago. I run a nonprofit. Been running a nonprofit for the last 6 years that helps people get jobs from overlooked and untapped communities in the tech industry. And so, this is amazing. I love the book that I got to review and get picked for. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to go hard. I guess I'll popcorn it to Will and save Leslie some time to get us going.
Legend. Yeah, my name's Will. Currently work for a company called Lavender, which is like sales tech. But end of this month, I'm starting my own thing. Leslie made it sound so good. So I'm going to be doing that, which meant this book was really interesting for me. So excited to talk about it.
I do feel like this book ended up being both the exact right guests for this book, which I didn't know when I was like, this is when you need to show up, please. But it worked out really well. Okay, let's go in. So Seth starts the book with a quote that says, "If you're not drowning, you're a lifeguard." And I read it multiple times and then had to set the book down for a second because it's like very subtly profound. And I would just love to hear how that statement makes you feel. If you're not drowning, you're a lifeguard. And as always, folks, anybody else is welcome to drop their thoughts in chat or come off mute and share them as well. But I don't know, Will, what you gave me what feels did you make you feel?
Admittedly, it didn't make me feel that much when I read it. There was definitely things that hit me more in it, but you saying it was like it was immediate snapback, like, oh yeah, I remember that. I think I could probably identify with drowning a lot. So I, think about lifeguards and probably thinking more about times where other people probably weren't drowning. They could have been lifeguards in that situation. But yeah, it's definitely tweet worthy. But yeah. there was things that I probably related to a little bit more in that, only because I've never led people as well. Like that's a big consideration for me when reading these things. Nor do I want to be honest, because I have a hard enough time keeping myself alive.
Yeah, managing people is very difficult. It is a huge part of why I decided to be a solopreneur. I don't have to do it if I don't want to, and I don't want to. Shelton, what about you?
Well, the statement came after his rant about what's not working, and I agree with everything that isn't working, and wholeheartedly felt the anguish. I thought I was reading my own manifesto for a second. But then so I'm a very visual thinker, right? So I think and so when I thought drowning, I thought like a beach, and I feel like that's what I see, right? I feel like I see a lot of people drowning in their careers, and it just made me think like I need to find a different vacation spot from don't go around bodies of water because there are going to be people drowning there. And it was just like, I just felt like, you're always on duty. Like this aspect of like, once if you're not in the water, you're not drowning. I feel like you're always on duty. And so it's just, I felt even more fatigued in that moment of like, dang, it's kind of right. Like, I got to walk around with lifesavers. If I'm helping people, I'm walking around with them, and it makes the beach and the pool a horrible place to go. It's kind of like my word picture that came to mind.
Ooh, okay. That's how, and that is like not the direction my mind went, but you also very much are a lifeguard. Like you have dedicated your professional life to being a lifeguard, to taking those people that are drowning and creating paths for them to start forming generational wealth. Like you, yeah, okay. I also saw like ocean waves pulling me under when I read it. And to me, it felt like a bit of a call to action, because I think I felt for so long like I was drowning. And then I said deuces to corporate America and spent a year and a half just deeply investing in my mental health. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm a lifeguard. Look at
I
me
mean,
lifeguarding over here.
I think that's right, right? So you come and volunteer, and I feel like you see kind of what I see, like the folks that you help, you see them where they're like on a rant, they're on the same rant. Whenever you
Yeah.
walk across somebody that's still like working a job and doesn't have the, independence that Will now has and that you now have, and you hear him complain, it is literally that same rant of like, dag, man, it's not working. You're
Mm.
just like, man, it's a lifesaver.
Yeah. And I mean, that was a lot of the book that Seth goes through. I mean, a list more or less of the ways that our modern work is broken. And then he breaks it into 3 songs: the song of increase, the song of significance, the name of the book, and the song of safety. And he like explores that question of why are our modern ways of working so broken, and what can we do to fix it for ourselves and fix it for others. And one of the other questions that really struck me early on in the book was that prompt around what if we were working the best job we've ever had, and how can we create that reality for ourselves and others. And I was like, oh my God, I'm working the best job I've ever had. Like, holy shit, like this is amazing. And like one of the reasons that, or probably the primary reason that I left the corporate workforce, it wasn't because I had these aspirations for entrepreneurialism. It was because I had this like deep and abiding sense of burnout that I couldn't escape. Like the waves were always there trying to pull me back under. And I highly doubt that I'm the only person here that has struggled, or maybe is currently struggling with burnout. So I thought that would be just an interesting thing to stay on for a little bit longer. Seth says a few chapters into the book that until our existential needs are met, it's difficult to produce the emotional labor needed for progress and possibility. It takes emotional labor to show up and care about the work we are doing. And like Shelton, Will, I know that each of you are like, you're humans that care deeply, which means that you contribute emotional labor in a unique way. Like Shelton, you at the nonprofit, I know that's a huge amount of emotional labor. I typed this out and then I was like, I bet Will's going to like try to be humble, but you are genuinely one of the best known B2B creators in the entire world. Like you really are. I thought about it and I was like, oh, get it, Will. But that also like constantly having the pressure of showing up and knowing that everybody's looking at you, like that's a whole type of emotional labor. So how do you handle it? Is a very long-winded question that I'm getting to. Like, how do you come to you first, Will? Like, how do you handle that emotional labor of like knowing what you say has so much impact on so many people? / am I now causing you to have an existential crisis?
A little bit, Leslie. I don't want to like seem like I don't think about those things profoundly. There's definitely some things where I was like super strong, like, but like for what you mentioned, like I've never really thought about that deeply, I guess. I just kind of just do it because it's fun and has happened to make a career for myself as well, right? But I will say that to your point, that emotional labor, like when you've got things like your needs aren't met, you're never going to be in that growth stage where you innovate, where you go out there and do things, and like you spend so much time at work. So when the work's not helping you feel good, you're never going to get into that growth stage. Like the I should have taken notes because I don't have the words that were exactly written, but like the idea that inspired employees don't need to be coerced, like I've found myself needing to be coerced a lot in jobs where I haven't been, either because of the job or things outside of going on outside of my life, outside of work, and it's so much more fulfilling, and it can actually be the thing that inspires you when your work is inspiring. But if it's not, then it can be that thing that prevents you from feeling inspired and actually doing that really creative, that human work, which is a lot of what I do, right? So when I am feeling crap, for lack of a better term, my work's never going to be good because it is a very creative line of work, right? Even it might be good, but I'll still hate it, or I won't think it's good enough, or that imposter syndrome will creep in, but in a bad way, because there's some ways that he talks about in the book where it's a good thing sometimes, but in the self-doubt space.
Yeah.
To answer your question, Leslie, I've never thought about impacting people's lives. I just keep kind of going.
Well, like part of what made me think about the question is some of the things that you shared with me in private, just about like the creative journey and about staying true to your values as a human. And I know that those things do have an impact that make it more difficult maybe to show up sometimes.
Yeah. And I think it's the reason why I'm showing up as well, right?
Yeah.
So am I showing up for, is the reason why I'm showing up no longer something that's going to inspire me? That's probably where that then becomes a real big toll, right? And probably why I've always changed jobs is because I've asked myself that question, found no, the reason why I'm doing this is no longer inspiring me because this is going wrong, or my job feels mundane, or someone else who I'm working with or associating with isn't sharing the values that I hold really deeply close to me.
Yeah.
In those cases, I'm never going to do my best work, and that's often where decisions to change happen, right? Because otherwise I wouldn't be able to work or do anything.
Yeah, it sounds like for you, like having that internal inspiration makes the emotional labor less laborious. But like that is how you handle it, is to make sure that you put yourself in situations where you feel inspired.
Yeah. And I think part of the reason why I've made the decision recently to go and do my own thing is because I feel like I've never made that reason about I've never made that reason selfishly about myself. You know what I mean? It's always been for someone else, like since I've created, I've kind of almost been creating on someone else's behalf for the most part. And I've never really bet on what I believe in and everything that's in here instead of like what someone else's mission or someone else's values. So, yeah.
Powerful. And it's like, that's one of the things that Seth calls out as one of the ways that work is broken, that the historical narrative has been that our work needs to be everything. Like our work needs to give us all of our worth. And that in exchange, we should be dedicating, like, I don't know, like our identity should be tied to our work in a way that I don't think serves most people anymore. And I bet all of us on this call have been in a job where you were like, oh, I would quit, but I don't want to let people down.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
In fact, the most recent job I left for this one, I was like, someone was trying to coerce me into joining Lavender at the time. And I was like, I gave all these reasons why I didn't want to. And they came back to me and said, none of those reasons are to do with you at all, It was
Yeah,
all,
there it is.
I don't want this person to be like with my work. I want to like the team at risk. I don't want my boss to get blamed for not keeping me engaged. You know, like it was all, I don't want, you know, I don't want my family to have to deal with the fact I'm going to have to work really. Like, although that was a little bit closer to me than like my colleagues and stuff.
Mm.
So when I've found that the only thing that stopped me from making decisions is other people, it's often time to reflect. But I'm a naturally guilty person anyway, so like that's I you know, like I know Leslie, you feel this way a lot as well, but like guilt's like I could do nothing wrong and I'll be like, I've upset someone, you know. So
I could
yeah, I would
literally
actually
have
go out there
like
and do stuff wrong.
like I could be like dying of the flu and then feel guilty because I'm watching a movie instead of like doing a chore. It just guilt comes so naturally to me. I'm working on it. I'm working on it, folks.
Let it go. Let it go. You gotta
I'm trying. I'm
release.
trying. Sheldon, Mr. Lifeguard, you do a lot of emotional labor. Like I know you do it in your job, but I also know that you do it because you listen to a lot of these stories. Like part of your job is to listen to people's stories, and some of them are really tough stories because I've listened to many of them in my opportunities to volunteer for rework. How do you handle, cope with, counteract that emotional labor?
Sometimes I don't. You know, I think it's like a work in progress. You know, and I think to the point of Will, like contributing to bad days. Like there are days where you could probably tell where it's like, Sheldon, you ain't dealing with this. It's somebody else's, you know, labor that's on me that I'm kind of responding to, or that I've projected outward. Like I've projected somebody else's labor. They projected it on me, and I projected it back to the world. And so I don't always handle it the best. So in theory, you know, ideally I try not to take it from day to day. You know, I take leave yesterday's emotional labor and yesterday, and I try not to think about tomorrow's emotional labor because I know it's going to be plenty of it. That's what I would like to say on paper. But you know, I'm probably only getting it right maybe twice, 2 days out of a week while I'm actually not carrying it. You know, I feel like sometimes it builds up. I feel like it's both ways. I feel like sometimes the emotional labor of like some things are going well. You know, because Monday goes great, and I'm like on high, and I try to take that positive emotional labor to Tuesday, and then Tuesday everybody gets laid off, and nobody's doing great, and people's, you know, cats are dying, and now it's just like I mentally have just shifted, and it's just, you know, sometimes hard to let go. You know, I think I'm a little bit more aware now. Like, you know, I could usually catch it. I don't let it kill a week, you know. So if it's happening, usually I take a day and try to reset and go do something. But yeah, I think just fundamentally, I try not to take it from day to day and just be really aware of, you know, in the morning, let's be intentional. It's like it's a new day, and
Yeah.
whatever is gonna happen today is gonna happen today.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good philosophy. It's some of those like salesperson muscles coming out. Like we have hard days, we face rejection, we take a break and get our mind right, and then we come back knowing that today is a new day, new opportunity. And I know that like when I was thinking about this question in context of you, like the work that you do is truly so significant. Like when we think about the Song of Significant, you also get this opportunity on a daily basis to like fundamentally change the trajectory of people's lives.
Yeah, I mean, that's easier said than done, though. I mean, I feel like, so one of the things that I guess resonated with Seth, he talked about this industrialized mindset, right? And it's weird
Yeah.
because I feel like there's levels to it, you know. I feel like there's levels to it where some people have been exposed to it and they're used to it. Some people have been victimized by it. And so then they, you know, they come with a lot of emotional baggage, you know. They come with just like and then you can tell because I'm just gonna drop like stuff that stood out to me early on when he said like hurt people. All
Okay.
right. And I feel like sometimes they come, you ever like working with a hurt person, like you can tell, like it's just like a man, it's like a negative like cloud that you're just like, dude, what's, and it's not as simple as, you know, it's no simple one size fits all approach to it. to get them, to the end goal. And so, yeah, man, it's just like I gotta literally just do my best, just not to project it and drop it one day at a time.
Mm,
Both the good and the bad.
yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't get to like lay in the good and be like, oh, this is great, because it'll set me up for failure tomorrow.
I used to wear a bracelet until it broke that said this too shall pass. And like that was my mantra. Like this too shall pass. So don't spend too much time like reminiscing on only the good stuff and not prepare like reminiscing on past good stuff and not preparing for future good stuff. This too shall pass for the bad stuff. So don't let it rent so much space in your head that you're then letting it distract you from being present or distract you from the potential ahead. That's very relatable. So something that both of you hit on was like that industrialization piece, or will like the guilt of not wanting to let people down, or the sort of like we're a family here mentality that I think some of us feel more than others. And it's interesting because last month we read a book called Predictably Irrational by Dan Ariely, and he talked a lot about the shift from social norms to market norms. Social norms being like we do the job and we treat our employees in a certain way because it's the right and good thing to do. Like we show up to our job because we are good community members. And market norms being like we work in exchange for money. This is a transactional exchange, and that's what we're here to do. And companies are really struggling with that balance. I think we've all seen, I mean, we've probably seen this in our own companies, or at least we've seen it like on LinkedIn with friends. But the companies that are like, we're a family here, and then the next week they lay off 20% of their workforce with like no warning a week before the holidays. And you see it a lot with like the accusations of quiet quitting, when really all quiet quitting is just a description of people that want to show up and do their job, and then at 5 p.m. when they're not getting paid, be done doing the job that they're no longer getting paid to do. And like I'm sure everybody has their own sort of example of that. And what Seth said is that what companies need has shifted. And this is kind of to your point, Shelton, that they no longer need employees to work on manual tasks, right? Like we're out of the sort of blue collar assembly line era. And now organizations seek to apparently scarce resources, creativity, and humanity. And I'd love to come to you first, Shelton, because like the work that you're doing is preparing this next generation of professionals. How do you think about preparing them for skills like creativity and humanity, which are like, squishy? It's not, this is how you cold call, whatever it is. Like how do you think about the ways the next generation of sales professionals need to walk into the workforce with skill sets like creativity and humanity?
Honestly, I think they naturally have that. Like they on their own before they come to that, and
They haven't been broken down yet.
yeah, it's been suppressed. This has been like you hear over and over again of somebody telling you like this is how you're supposed to show up, this is how you're supposed to do. It's kind of like what Will said, right? Where it's just, it's this weird like paradigm of like, you're either in the workforce, and I think if you start in a company that's already industrialized, right?
Yeah.
It's gonna take time to almost just it's some benefits that come with that, right? You get this structure, you get to see how the machine works, and you become a part of it. On the opposite end of the spectrum, if you go to a company that isn't industrialized, where it's like we're looking for this freedom when we need to innovate, then you get to use it. But I think sometimes I feel majority of folks aren't at those kind of creative companies. And so then they get to that point of burnout because they've been like not themselves. And it's like, it's hard not to be yourself. Like it's more draining on you than anything else, of like you going to a place and spending 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, not being yourself. And so I feel like in teaching, folks, through the program at a nonprofit, really we spend a lot of time on like branding, like self-branding, and helping people to articulate like what makes them, like what do they uniquely bring to the table no job description, just like what do you uniquely bring to the table, and then like how do you solve problems uniquely being you, not how you think you're supposed to be, but uniquely being you. And honestly, it's a risk. I feel like I teach them this, and sometimes they go to organizations where industrialism is a thing, and they get fired in 90 days being themselves, and it's just like, oh man, But then they end up at a smaller organization, and then they thrive, And so I think it's just the evil, the greater. You gotta play devil's advocate of like, yeah, I know, most organizations don't like it. If you're like coming in with this free flowing view of the world, they don't like it. But I think in order to get what what you're asking for, this creativity and this humanity, it's like I think that's the best way to teach it, right? I think that's the best way
Yeah.
to teach it, like branding, helping people to be their own brand, their authentic self, and honestly, and I'm gonna get off my soapbox. Honestly, I think that if I think some of the fear isn't real, right? So like I think a lot of people haven't actually tried to be themselves, so that they're not used to it. And they think that if they go be themselves at work, something crazy is gonna happen. And so you know, it's just getting people comfortable with being themselves is what will I feel like bring that creativity and humanity.
I wish somebody would have given me that advice earlier in my career, that like you don't have to fit in a box, and you should just maybe give it a try. But there was, to your point, there was a lot of fear. And I did work in a very industrialized, like open sales floor. Here's the process, smiling. Yeah, no, that's really good. And I'm hearing a lot of like the value of authenticity, which I think will, for you, I mean, you literally are creative. And when I think like creativity and humanity, I feel like in the context of the work you do, it's like creativity and authenticity. So I mean, I'd love to hear if you have any tips for folks just on like how to be more creative, for sure. But like thinking about what Shelton just shared, like how do you get over the fear and show up as your authentic self? Because I know that scares the shit out of me. Like it's like the idea of getting rejected is scary, but you have to put yourself out there to get rejected to do the work you do.
Yeah, I think to your point, Shelton, I'd worked in many environments where it was very industrial, like especially like brought a couple of sales folks on really, and yourself as well. When I started, it was like follow this script, do this, don't do anything else, and you'd get reprimanded for being yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then when I found myself in an environment where I could actually be myself, I suddenly realized I didn't have to be this other thing, which to Shelton's point is exhausting and completely like you're never going to thrive pretending to be something you're not.
Yeah.
So when I was selling, I was like, oh my gosh, I can just like be myself in this. And all of a sudden my work became more fulfilling, more enjoyable. And I actually got better at it because then I was in a position where I could like thrive, and like my mood improved, and the conversations I was having with people improved. And of course that in sales especially improves your performance. And then I felt more creativity and found myself with more time to then go and start creating, which is how it all came about. Right. But that all came from just breaking out of a box that I thought I was meant to be in. And a lot of that was from some of the early days where I, probably even going all the way back to like my parents, like, especially I find like their generation, it was like, get a job, work till you're 65 and retire. Like there wasn't much of these conversations happening. So that almost gets inherited. And then you get a job like one of those jobs in a call center where it's going to like, got like a grayscale filter over it, and you're like, oh wow, this is it. And then suddenly, the moment when you realize you've done, it's like you suddenly put like color on the canvas. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's so much better now. And then you can go and do these things. To answer your question about how people should be themselves, I'm like, I people ask me how do you be creative. I'm like, I don't really know. I just do stuff. But like, that's me being myself. You know what I mean? Like the idea of the opposite is scarier in a way, right? Like not being yourself, like not trying to hide who you are and not commit to things that you believe in and align with your values and say things that aren't really you speaking. Sounds blooming exhausting, awful, boring. And in those cases, that's probably where people start to feel like, fakes. No one wants to be fake. And no one really likes fake people either. So it's not even like a win in anywhere along the way in that, right?
Yeah.
I found, I mean, you might talk about this, but like, there's a lot of companies who, like, I find, especially in the world that we work in, tech, I found that we're quite lucky that a lot of companies do want to enable that inspired, motivated, fulfilled human who gets trust. But people say that, and then I find it can fade away a lot of the time as well. Especially like that, this book was like super timely, just thinking about all the things that everyone's trying to automate right now, of AI and jobs being replaced, and I think it was like the first couple of paragraphs of the first chapter was like humanity, and that's realizing that, and humanity is being yourself pretty much, and all that. So a lot of that resonated with me, but a lot of people say, a lot of companies think they want that, but it's so much easier because of like the measurement and the especially when you have investors or someone above you who wants answers, and it's easier to give them numbers than it is give them a story. I find more often than not, especially when times get tough, they trend away from that. And often that move from, like, I think it's funny because you said market earlier, but I think in this book he says market capitalism is the good one, and then industrial capitalism is the bad one.
Yeah.
But you start to see, he said something in it where like people get worn down, and especially now where there's all this negativity in the world, you can't open up social media without seeing, like, being hit with like 10 doom scrolling posts about wars over here, or people being injustices over here, and you go on LinkedIn, there's layoffs over here, and the economy is scary and doesn't feel safe. So we look for safety and we accept that that like becoming a factory worker almost, right?
Yeah.
And he even says, like, a no shade to folks, like I think he used McDonald's as an example. Like, they've built it so much, it's like a perfect factory where the people are treated like a machine, and there's very little involvement of yourself. Like, it doesn't benefit McDonald's at all to have their employees being themselves in their massive thing, because their value prop is consistency, and it's easy to measure, and it's easy to improve profits or decrease profits or measure profits or whatever. But when times get tough, I find people, companies start to trend that way, because it's always the easier option, because it's more, and people get worn down as a result. But like, it doesn't happen all at once. It happens like gradually until one day you realize, I'm burnt out, I'm done, and feeling the way you said you were feeling when you were like, just, I'm done with corporate America, right? That doesn't happen overnight. That happens with, like, in increments, where slowly your authenticity is taken away from you.
Yeah. Bit by bit, you lose those pieces of you lose any feeling of significance. And like, I think one of the points that Seth makes really well in the book is that significance is, and I think you said this too, Will, or hinted at it, that like significance is both the harder and the easier choice. Like, it is harder to choose significance, but then when you choose significance, you have the opportunity to live a more wholehearted life. But significance is harder to choose because the song of safety is so loud. And I'd love to throw this question out to the entire group, because one of the questions that Seth asks for the song of safety is, actually drop it in the chat, what have we been trained to believe about the 100,000 hours that we will spend at work that isn't helpful? And yeah, I mean, I'd love to hear everybody's thoughts on this one. So drop a comment and come off mute. And when I read this question, the thing that popped into my head straight away, because it's one of the biggest lies I've been told, but I also like believed it. I really, really believed it, is that my job defined me, and that the job I did, the work I did, was the most important thing about me. Like, I truly believed it for so many years, that if I didn't have like a fancy job or make X amount of money or wasn't tracking towards X promotion, I was like less worthy because of it. Yuck. We dug into that in Brene's Brown book. I cried during that session. And I would just, I know that I mean, maybe other people didn't feel that specific one, but I know everybody has that sort of like lie that they've been told about work that maybe it was like a limiting belief they already questioned and overcame, or maybe it's something you're working through right now. So if anybody feels comfortable.
About it a little. One thing that I was told my entire life is that if I'm not waking up at 4:30 in the morning and spending 3 hours in the morning before I get to work at 8 o'clock or 15 minutes before 8, and then sit there until 6 p.m. and go home and go to sleep at 7 p.m., I am not successful in training myself for success. And I know myself, and I know that I am most productive like afternoons and late into the night, and that's just how my body functions. And, one of the great things about working remotely and in the tech space is I can use those hours that are actually productive for me to work, and not necessarily force myself to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and do things that aren't good for my mental health.
Yeah, like that hustle and grind narrative was so strong that for a while it like overran you listening to your own intuition and your own body.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Maren. Anybody else have one they're open to share? Yeah, Renee.
Yeah, well, I've been doing this so long, and I think again it's why it's sort of like not to quit the corporate America, but being in that grind where you think about the perception is more important than the output, right? That Seth talks about as well, is if you're perceived to be acting in some way or grinding or getting up at 4 and doing all these things, that is so much more important than actually what your output, right? And he talks about HP and the leave your work open and show your work. And I think so much of that really is forgotten, right? The show your work. It's not the work, it's the perception of the work. That's for so much, that was the validity that sort of would override what someone might be doing. And I think what I really enjoy so much now is that voice of different work styles, right? Not everyone works the same. Not everyone is energized in the morning. Some people are night owls. Some people like the noise and they like social media and they like Slack and they're like, oh, some people don't. Some people like the quiet. And I think now what is really healthy is that respect for the show your work. And like, that's the purpose. Focus on that. Don't focus on these arbitrary, look at so-and-so doing all of this when it really is noise. And so I do think, again, doing it for so long, I think that was the trend, right? Was the hype. And now it seems there is more of a trend in how people can be doing things differently, which is really nice.
I love that. That's a really good call out, Renee, particularly for this group, because something that we have talked about during many different sessions of book club is just how neurodivergent brains are different. And until very recently, there was no space. There was a right way and a wrong way. There wasn't a spectrum of ways that different people could work to get that same outcome. I love that call out. Randy, what were you going to share?
I was just going to say it's a little bit different, but piggybacking off of what you said, and it's so often, we do or have, and I know I personally did, who I was and how successful I was tied to the role I had, how much I was making, and that comparison, or having to compare, or feeling like you're less than if you're not X. And I took a break in my career, and it took me like a while to really only in the last few years that it's like, that I'm actually, as you know, Leslie knows, I'm owning my journey and I'm the best that I've ever been. And I don't regret it. And I know I'm not for everyone. And there's something that comes, the difference between self-confidence and self-worth, knowing who you are at your core and being able to show up. And I say OPO, other people's opinion, like whatever. And like I said, I know I'm not for everyone, but that took me a long time. I'm like, going to be 54 at the end of the year. And I say that proudly because I am the best and still have a ways to go. I'm still a work in progress, but man, it took me that long to figure that shit out. But it really comes down to you actually knowing your worth. And yeah, that's, I wish I could have told my 20-year-old self that.
Yeah, that hit me in the feels. I was like,
Mhm.
yeah. Oh, appreciate you sharing that. Will, Sheldon, anything pop into your head on this one?
What you
That's
said about the
okay. Oh,
perception
go ahead.
for a
Yeah.
moment there, like the perception how you look to other people, like you're kind of pleasing other folks, right? When I decided to do this, like my biggest dread was telling my dad I was gonna do it because I knew he was gonna be like, oh well, that's not the safe option, right? But that's the limiting belief that we're luckily breaking out of. I think. Second thing is I think like this idea that you should be grateful to an employer. I think that's or like you should feel lucky to have a job. I think that's exactly that safety thing. That's that like thing that
Yeah.
holds you back from drawing your lines and knowing your values and doing work that inspires you because you're like, oh well, it's meant to be this way. I'm lucky to have a job anyway. That's talking from a place of safety, but
Yeah. But who's heard that before? Like raise of hands, who's been told by a parent, a colleague, an employer that they're lucky to even have a job? Right? Like that's a common refrain. Yeah, I also raise of hands who had a job during the Great Recession. Will, I know you can't raise your hand, but like anybody that's worked through a recession, I heard that so often. Like, who are you to think that you even deserve to try to find a better job? You're lucky you have a job at all. And I was like, oh, okay. I mean, I do sometimes go home and cry at night, but I guess I'll just stay here because it's better to have a job than not have a job. Your mom tells you that every time you talk about leaving a company. Your mom and my dad would get along really well, Jeremy. I'm going to share this slide because it's kind of a lot of text. I'll read it as well, but well, I can't, what are you doing, Leslie? Get your act together, Vanette. This is like one of the sections that Seth, right before it says, if you only have time to read one section in this book, make it this one. And so I felt like it was well worth sharing, particularly because it's so nicely in the context of where this conversation has gone. Maybe instead of reading it, I don't know, maybe we just take like 30 seconds to read it quietly because it's quite powerful. I know. Our actual work is to dance with the fear. Like, okay. I mean, I feel that keenly. And Will, I guarantee you're feeling some of that right now, like making the decision to place a big bet on yourself, to leave a, tidy little paycheck that just shows up in your account every week or other week or every month or whatever. Like that is terrifying. I know everybody here has felt this when they have applied for a different job or accepted the offer or like launched a passion for, whatever it is. I know everybody has danced with that fear at some point. And I'd love to wrap today by just talking about dancing with that fear and this this concept as well. But let's first talk about the dancing with the fear. Where, I mean, we know the answer, right? It's significance is where is where you get the confidence from, I suppose. But I just love to hear from the group. Like, how do you dance with your fear? How do you find that confidence? How do you know what that North Star of significance is?
Well, sorry.
Sorry, Allison, Jeremy, do you hate this font?
Oh, it's terrible.
Okay, it's okay.
Horrible.
Hilarious.
We have to do an aside
Comment.
really quick, because I just got my brand deck redone, and this is the font she gave me, and I have not used it because it's only for business book club, but when I look at it, it makes my brain hurt. And then I was like, you're being crazy, it's just you. This is very validating. Thank you all so much.
As a
It's like
dyslexic
distracting.
person,
Okay, thank you.
I can't process. It was so hard to read it being dyslexic. I just can't.
Well, I'm sorry for
It summons demons, he said. That
I know, I was like, okay, I need, like, I
was-
didn't mean to interrupt you, Allison, but I was like, I need to know the answer to this because I wanted to know it's not just me, my husband too, and he never like is picky about anything. And I was like, okay, well, we'll see. Okay, good sense check. Allison, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Back to you, please.
No, thank you for that commentary because I contributed one of the emojis, so I appreciate all sides of this conversation. What I was gonna say was this really like struck a chord with me. Just for context, like I was laid off a few months ago. I'm looking at jobs, and there's this job that seems really promising. That I'm for a company I'm interviewing with right now, but the fear, I'm like, ooh, it's early stage startup. Like, are they profitable? Like, there's this part of me, and I like, and that's by design, right? To your point, like industrialists have capitalized on this fear, right? To get it's like, ooh, like it isn't safe to go to an early stage startup, even though it's like aligned with my values, it's mission driven, like it's an industry I'm super interested in. It's like one of my target companies, but there's that part of me, and like maybe it's my mom in the back of my head, but it's exactly what we were talking about, just like this culture, and it's just being worn down by this like industrial complex where it's like, no, the pull is to go work for another one of these large industrial companies, right? Where it's the same thing. We're a family until we lay off 20% of our workforce and we'll grind you into the ground, right? But it's like, that's like the psychological warfare that we've all been subject to, for lack of a better word. And like, that's the proof, like how I know that it's working. But it's like, reading something like this where it's like gives you the context and the awareness to be like, okay, I need to step outside myself, like this is by design, and like I deserve to take a bet on myself. Like it's something, for all intents and purposes, I am very interested in, but like that's just how we've all been trained and socialized.
It's true. Like the safety is the lie. Like it's safer to work for a big company. Says who?
I mean, I just worked for a big company and like they laid me, like, and that's exactly right. The safety is the lie.
The safety is the lie. Powerful.
No, I think for me, it's like that, so 100%, like the safety is the lie resonated a lot. But I think the biggest takeaway I got from this book was about bees, interestingly enough. And like,
are you ready for a matriarchy?
Oh man, I was just
Have
like,
you watched the Barbie movie yet?
Look, So this concept of like bees, they leave a hive, and so one I had to go look up why do bees leave hives, and it was like lack of water, problem with the queen, challenges, issues, right, that challenge their existence, and so they leave a hive, and they go look for a new hive in a period of time, and it basically said like whatever hive they find is not going to be perfect, but they gonna take the allotted period of time. They're gonna find a hive and they're gonna stay there until they need to leave again. I feel like we got to get used to doing that when it comes to our careers. Or like there is no perfect hive, and as many promises as the industrialized organizations make around we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. It's gonna be great until the hive or the queen goes bad, and we need to find a new hive and go to a different, find a different, and I think just accepting that of like, as bees, we gotta, that's my take. As a bee, I gotta go find a new
Bees are
hive.
the perfect
Whenever the
one.
queen goes bad or the water, not enough honey is being produced, we gonna need to, and it's not gonna be perfect, right? I'm gonna find the most suitable place in a period of, I forgot what he said, the allotted period of time, the time available is kind of how I think about it.
It's like 3 days or something insane, right? And
Yeah.
you go out
That's
as a
what
scout,
I'm
you have
thinking.
3 days, you all come back together unanimously, you decide. I mean, that really was a beautiful sentiment, I thought. Yeah, totally agree. Sheldon, it's like, did
Be a
my
bee.
job, we all agree, we have a new house, let's go.
Let's go. Let's be a bee. It's good enough. Like, is it pay? Yep. Will it be here in 6 months? Possibly not in 6 months. In 5, we may have to go start looking for a new hive.
But I think like that's part of the lie too, that maybe our parents, our grandparents' generation, they worked for one company and loyalty was paramount and loyalty would be rewarded. And I've never experienced that in my own career. And I think that that's now the more common narrative, that actually loyalty is a quick path to stemming your wage potential over your career. It's a sure path to not having those opportunities to be creative, to try new things, to place big bets on yourself. So be willing to move. As a total aside, has anybody here ever done StrengthsFinder? Yeah, some people like heard of it. I've taken it 3 times over like 20 years, at like very different points of my career, like recently graduated, like brand new manager, very experienced manager, and they swear that it should never change. And I've always hated that. Like it just has always really, really irked me, like the concept. The one thing that hasn't changed over 20 years is my number one strength is significance. Like I deeply need to believe that the work I do matter, or like I'm out on that. But what just made me think of it, Shelton, is you're talking about the bees, that like all my other key strengths shifted dramatically. And what was a dream job for us? What was a significant job one year? As we evolve as humans, as our strengths evolve, as our values change, as our family dynamics change, like that might not be the dream job, the significant job a year later. So be willing to go find your new bee.
Beehive, yeah.
Beehive.
Leslie, but then you're going to be a job hopper, right?
Exactly. And like, we can't be hiring job hoppers because it's all the lies we've been told. Oh my God.
Oh man, I got receipts on that though. Like I've like done the LinkedIn, I go in people's the unknown area, on people's like successful people, their unknown area, where it's just like, look at all the experience and down the 16 jobs. I see them changing hives. It's just like, oh, you was, less than a year.
Yeah.
And then, ideally the hive got better. You found better hives as you got used to them. I think the concept of like, I feel a lot of us just don't know what a good hive looks like, right? And I feel like you need that time of like, let me go here, let me go there, to actually figure out what a good hive looks like. Or you may just need to, like Will, I'm about to create my own hive. And and that's what we may need to do.
I think as time goes on as well, you start to realize your own value a little bit more, right? Like I feel like, as I mentioned, all the jobs I first had at the start of my career were all very mind blank. It's like 8 o'clock here, so give me a sec. The not market industrial, the evil one, right? But like I didn't know what I was worth, and I didn't really have any skills then. I mean, sure, I was still me, but like you get that point where it's less about feeling grateful for having a job and just feeling like, okay, they're lucky to have me in a way, right? You start to see that self-worth, and that's when so I imagine a lot of these feelings for most people come up a little bit into their career when they're feeling a little more accomplished.
Yeah, like a line to Randy share about it being a journey, and then realizing that like deeply believing in your own worth gives you the confidence to both know what hives work for you and which don't, and then probably the confidence to be like, this isn't, I'm not for you, we're not, I don't need to be for everybody. I can't be all things to all people, and this is not the right hive for me.
Nothing wrong with being first. You know, sometimes there's like, you know, you want that safety with the herd, or you know what I mean? But there's nothing wrong with being first either. Being different or being first is okay. And I think once again, there's like kind of that safety factor that some people, that's why you got to lean into fear and the uncomfortable.
I love it. This was amazing. I love book club. Thank you all so much for being here. Special thank you to Will and Shelton. Super appreciate you reading the book and coming on and chatting through it with us tonight. And hopefully we'll see you all next month for Grit with Angela Duckworth. Night team.
Everybody.
Thank you all so
Bye.
much.
Thanks, Leslie.
Bye.
Bye, thanks.